So if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that marriage is in trouble, right? I don't care what side of the spectrum you're on, what side of the political spectrum you're on, the religious spectrum you're on. No one says, oh, marriage is doing great these days, you know? Everyone's worried about marriage. I think we can agree on that, right? So, everyone, everyone knows the divorce rates. Everyone knows, that the perils of getting married. Everyone's just anxious about marriage. Now, I have some good news. You can easily fix marriage. Well, easy isn't the right word. You can simply fix marriage, because marriage is like climbing a mountain. It is hard, but it's not complicated. Not really complicated. You can understand how you get to the top of a mountain. It's just hard to do it. Same thing with marriage. Okay? So this is what I propose for the modern world. We go back to the barbaric, savage idea of Christian marriage. These dark, dark days where women were property and owned by their husbands, and they had wives submit to your husbands, and then husbands just slaved away for their wives. We go back to that, and that works. That's always worked. It is the natural thing. You don't need to be a Christian to believe in this. So the Christian version of marriage. I'm going to say that right now. Let's define what that is. It's defined in the Bible. In Ephesians, it says, wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Now, keep in mind, you don't need to be a Christian to see the wisdom here, okay? Wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. In case you don't get what that means, it means husbands, be willing to be tortured to death for your wives. Those are the two halves of Christian marriage. Now, here is the trick about it, okay? There are two halves. Wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, be willing to die in torment for your wives. Taken by themselves, they sound outrageous and unfair, but when you put them together, there's nothing more beautiful. There's nothing more beautiful. You have to pin them together, though. So, on one side, the feminists are outraged by wives submit to your husbands. They were outraged by that. And on the other hand, there's the men's rights activists, not as big as the feminists, but they're out there, and they're outraged by the husbands, love your wives as what Christ loved the church. Like, you're gonna love these unworthy women. You're gonna just sacrifice, lay down, be a cuck, just just lose your manhood for your wife, for your wife, and just like she rules you and she, divorces you and takes all your money. No, we don't want that. That's horrible. It's slavery. So both sides of this, like the extremists on both sides, don't like this idea. But here's the thing. Both of them are right. Because if only one half of the equation is there, it is bad. It is torturous. It is outrageous. And the marriage will fall apart. You have to work together. It's like yin and yang. Marriage only works when both are in play simultaneously. And here's the thing. We know this Christian ideal of marriage is true because we're all disgusted by the opposite. Because does anyone really like a weenie, lazy husband? No, everyone hates that. Everyone sees that and just has a visceral disgust of it. Does anyone really love the bossy, domineering wife who has him by the apron strings? No, we don't. We need massive doses of propaganda to overcome our natural, healthy disgust at these things, the weenie husband, the bossy wife. We just like, ugh, it's just a natural, ugh. So, you see, the ideal also accords with human nature, okay? Like, that's what I said. You don't need to be a Christian to believe in this stuff or see the wisdom of it, all right? Okay, so the Christian model of male-female relationships is one of the most tried and true things in the whole world. When done right, it creates an almost indestructible little circle of love, unable to be broken by either hardships or government interference. So why do you think it's hated so much? I don't know. Why do you think the government doesn't like it? I have no idea. So personally, I think it's dangerous for husbands to be submissive to their wives, and I think it's dangerous for wives to try to be the main source of income for their families. Note that try to be. Both are deviations from the ideal, and we know the ideal works, okay? So what the anti-marriage propaganda tries to do, it makes a fake caricature of this ideal. They tell husbands that being submissive means that husbands they tell women, I say, that being submissive means that the husband will be the tyrant over you. They tell husbands that the sacrifice of marriage means they have to submit to their wives, to give up their manhood. And people are doing that. Right now we see men submitting to their wives and wives sacrificing for their husbands. And it's not working. It's not working. The ideal is the exact opposite. The woman submits, the man sacrifices. Now let's talk about what that really is, not the propaganda. So let's hear me out, okay? This is how submission works in real life. And I know this because I've been married for almost 10 years, okay? In real life, this is how it works. And just the husband lets his wife do everything and make all the plans and make even most of the decisions. He's like, yeah, you can you're in charge of the house, you know? You're in charge of everything. Like, yeah, you're in charge of the budget. You can, that's fine. But sometimes, like he's like the president, you have to make the veto. He has the veto power, and he has to be consulted about the big decisions, and he must approve them before going forward. And in the end of the day, he's like, okay, no, we're not doing this. Sorry, no. That happens very rarely. It's a rare occasion, especially when you have a really good wife like I do, who's very sensible and wise, you know? But sometimes you just have to do it. You have to have someone say, no, you're not going to do that, you know? Now, is this so unhealthy? Is this so unhealthy for the man to be consulted about big decisions and have some veto power? Is it really that bad? Doesn't sound so to me. So this whole idea of men being tyrants over their wives, well, this is the thing, okay? Husbands are called to heroic sacrifice. They're not called to weenie submission, because submission isn't a sacrifice. For a man to submit, it's very easy to do that. It's like, oh yeah, sure, you can just do whatever you want, honey, I don't care, you know? No, that's not sacrifice. You have to work to get the money for the wife and the kids. You have to sacrifice your own pleasure. You have to sacrifice your own sexual pleasure. You got to sacrifice your own, just regular, even playing video games, just lots of tiny little sacrifices. You have to work at a job maybe you don't like, okay? But you have to do this because you must not allow your charges to stray. You are the shepherd of this little flock, all right? And it's on you if they go astray. It's something's wrong. You have to step in. That's what husbands have to do, okay? It's a thankless job. Okay, think of all the dads that have to tell their kids that's wrong. You can't do that, and the kids will not appreciate it, and they might even do the thing anyway. But you still have to do it. You still have to be the witness. You still have to say no. You can't do this. You still have to just give up on a lot of the things that you cared about that are for yourself, for your wife. Okay, this has nothing to do with this soy boy groveling you see men do these days. There's this descent into childhood. Instead of the mature burdens of manhood, men are not called to submit, but to endure. They have power, and they must yield it wisely. So beware of anyone who dismisses the traditional wife or husband roles, because their advice will lead you to a life of misery and hatred every single time. So here are some tips for wives and husbands, okay, that I've learned. And I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect. This is just what I made mistakes, so you don't have to, perhaps. Don't lecture your opposite on their responsibility. Don't tell your wife, oh, you have to submit to me. And wife, don't tell your husband, you have to sacrifice for me. Worry about your own problems. That's more than enough work for you. So wives, you worry about submitting sometimes, and husbands, you worry about sacrificing. You have to worry about, that's what you're called to. And remember that these callings are for marriage. They're not for a general male-female relationship. So, like this doesn't say women submit to men. It says wives submit to husbands. It doesn't say men sacrifice for all women. It says men sacrifice for your wives. Okay? So it sounds so simple, but it's amazing how many people misinterpret that. They think, oh, Christianity means that women are inferior to men. No, it just doesn't mean that wives are inferior to husbands. It just means that wives should submit to their husbands. And it doesn't say that men are just have to be like, womanized and weenies. That's a caricature. No, it means that men don't have to sacrifice and give up everything for women, like the what's it called, the stupid made-up name that some of these MRAs came up with, like gynocentric. It's not gynocentric. It's just saying not men all have to sacrifice for women, but husbands have to sacrifice for their wives. Another tip: if you follow your own calling, it's going to make it much easier for your opposite to follow hers or his. It's hard for wives to submit to a weenie, lazy husband. It's hard for wives to respect a man enough to submit to him unless he's acting like a real man. And it's hard for husbands to sacrifice for a bossy, domineering shrew who doesn't respect him at all. So if you were like, why my husband's not acting the way he should, or my wife's not acting the way she should, well, look at yourself first, okay? Look at yourself first before you even look at her. See what's wrong with you. I mean, it's possible you could have married a psychopath, or it's possible that you're not as good as you think you are. The beauty of the Christian ideal of marriage, though, when it's done right, is that it builds itself up. The two halves build each other up. They keep on propping each other up. By following their vocation of sacrifice and submission, the husband and wife feed and sustain each other. The trick is just to follow the vocation. It's hard. But actually, most of the time, it's easy. That's the beauty of it. That's why marriage works. That's why marriage will survive. And if you want your marriage to work, it's not complicated. It's not a mystery. It's just hard. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel.